Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary, and today's video is going to be my Sorry Picks, my TBR for the month of May. I play this game every month. It's Sorry, which is a board game. And essentially what I do is I go around the board, I pull 4 cards to start. If I pull a Sorry card, then I add an extra card, which is an extra book. I go around the board to get prompts, and then I pick books to read off my TBR based on those prompts. So without further ado, I am just gonna jump into the first Sorry pick. So we're gonna start where we left off the last round, which was over here on fantasy. Move forward 5. And that's a person of color author. So the first prompt that I landed on was to read a book by a POC or person of color author. And for this, I ended up going with Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Booley, I believe is her last name, and she is Ojibwe, which is a native people in the United States. So this book is an Own Voices story. It's a YA mystery, I think. This has been on my TBR since it came out in 2021. It was very hyped back then. It's been 3 years, which is crazy, but I still have not read it, so it's time. And this is about a teenage girl, I believe, who is half Ojibwe, half white, perhaps, half something else. And she is not registered with the tribe, so she feels really like out of place with her life. And it's one of those stories where she's not quite sure which world she belongs in, because she doesn't really fully belong in either of them. And she ends up witnessing a murder. And then I think the story goes from there, where she's trying to figure out what's happened. I don't really want to know much more than that. The cover is beautiful. I remember seeing this all over bookstores and thinking it was so pretty, and I never ended up purchasing a copy, so I will be getting this from my library. That's how I do most of my reading anyways. If you hear a dog flopping on the ground, it's my dog flopping on the ground, so sorry about that. But I am very excited to finally put this on my TBR and read it. Move forward 8. A YA fantasy. The next prompt that I landed on was to read a YA fantasy, and for this I'm going to be reading To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo, which I believe is a YA fantasy set in like an ocean setting with pirates and mermaids, perhaps. So it follows Princess Lyra, who's a siren royalty and the most lethal of them all. So it is about sirens. And I think there is, it says there's a romance, and it's also a retelling, so I believe it's probably going to be a Little Mermaid retelling of sorts. So I'm wondering if, so sorry, I haven't read what this is about. I've just heard of it and I like the cover a lot. I also didn't realize this is part of a series, the 100 Kingdoms series. I don't think I have any of those other books on my TBR, so I am going to read this one, see how I feel about it. This came out back in 2018, so we'll see how I feel, but it does say that a prince rescues a drowning woman in the ocean, and she's more than what she appears. She promises to help him find the key to destroying all of siren kind for good, but can he trust her? And so I'm very interested to see how this one goes. I will say I went through a phase where YA really wasn't hitting for me, but the past couple of months I've read a couple of YA fantasies that have really worked for me. And I think it's just the simpler nature of those plots, because if you don't know, I am actually reading the Game of Thrones series right now, which is very epic high fantasy. And so I'm getting a little like bogged down by all of that. Although, spoiler for my upcoming wrap up, I am starting to like it a lot more. So that's good. Who knew book 3 would be where I was like, okay, I get it. But maybe. So anyways, I am excited to pick this one up because I think it'll be like a light, fluffy time. And if I enjoy it, I will add the rest of the books in the series to my TBR. Sorry, so we're adding another book. Move forward 7. Another YA fantasy. The next card that I pulled was a Sorry, which means I will be reading 5 books this month instead of 4. That's not really a problem for me. I do tend to read more than just the 4 books that I put on my TBR. I just like to keep the number small, because it seems like the more books that I pick to read, that I say like I'm going to read this, the less motivation I have to pick up those books. So my mileage varies month to month, but especially this month, I've just really not been in the mood to read what's on my TBR. It's like I'm filming this on the 27th, and to be honest, I forgot that I have a book on my TBR that I have not even considered reading. So I do need to get to that before the end of the month, hopefully. But you'll find out in my wrap up, which will either be my next video or the video after that. So the next prompt that I landed on was to read another YA fantasy. And for this, I'm going with Shadow and Bone by Lee Hugo. This is a book When I first started my YouTube channel and was first building up my TBR, I did ask my friends and followers and stuff for recommendations. And one of my college friends actually recommended the Shadow and Bone series. And I know that it's been made a Netflix series, and then the series was canceled. So I never watched the show because I wanted to read the books first. And the books, frankly, have always had an extremely long wait list in my library. I looked for this one still, and I think I have 4 different library cards. I'll try to remember to link the video of the guy who talks about different libraries that you don't have to live in that area in order to get a card with them. So I have 2 cards from that. I also have a card from the library in Northwest Arkansas where I lived previously, and then I have a card where I live now. I don't know if that's against the rules. It probably is, but I don't know how that really affects local libraries. I don't take out physical books. I just use the apps. So I have ebooks and audiobooks. If that's cheating, I'm sorry. I don't know. I also recently downloaded Everand back in February, I believe. And that used to be Scribd, but now it is Everand. And it's ebooks, audiobooks, podcasts, all sorts of stuff. But the thing with Everand is there's not like a limit on what you can check out. But if you check out a certain number of too many popular things at a time, it makes you wait a month before you can get something else. I tried to ask how that worked, and they basically were like, based on vibes. I don't know. So I was able to find Shadow and Bone on Everand, and I got that really quick. But then the next thing that I wanted to put on my TBR, I could not get from Everand. So I probably won't be reading that this month, but that's for a different prompt, which we can talk about in a minute. But Shadow and Bone is a heist fantasy, I believe. I believe it's a group, unless that's Six of Crows. Really don't know. I know Six of Crows is related to Shadow and Bone. I'm not sure which of them is heists. I know some people say that they either like one or the other, so I'm curious to see where I'll fall. But I do want to read all of it. And then I would be interested in watching the show. I know there was some controversy in the show about, was it brownface? I'm really not sure. I didn't look that much into it because, again, I was trying to avoid spoilers because I knew I wanted to read the book eventually. So I'm getting to it this month, hopefully. Move forward 12. Is my head in that frame? A second chance. Then the next prompt that I landed on was a second chance. Was the second chance prompt. And for this, I sort of take this to mean like a book that I've soft DNF'd, a book by an author that I didn't like another book by them, but I'm gonna read a new book by them to see if they just aren't an author for me or what. It also could be like rereading a book that I didn't love the first time, but I think I could love on reread. And it also could be like a book in a series. Like maybe I didn't love the first book in a series, but I want to give that series a second chance. You get the point. It's anything that would kind of fall into that. And to be honest with you, I had another book in mind that I really wanted to read, but none of my libraries have it. It's The Gone Away World by Nick Harkaway. I tried to read Gnomon and could not get into it. It was too weird. It just went too sideways, too fast. I could not get a like grip on what was going on. And it's like a really long book. And that happened at like page 180. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this for 800 pages. So I DNF'd that book. I still have it downstairs in my house. I thought about trying to pick that book back up, but honestly, I'm already behind on my Goodreads goal, which I know it's not real. Like it's pressure that I'm putting on myself, but I don't want to get bogged down in a book that I'm not enjoying and then feel like I have to finish it because I already DNF'd it once. You know what I mean? So instead, I'm going to be reading I Want to Show You More by Jamie Quattro, which is a short story collection. And I read Fire Sermon by this author a couple years ago now, and I didn't love that. It's kind of an experimental writing style. It was when I was first getting back into reading, and to be honest with you, like I just didn't really get along with the writing style that well at that point. But again, it's been, I think that was 2019, so it's been 5 years. So it's possible that I will like this one now that I'm reading it. I also remember not really liking the subject matter because I believe that one is about like a college professor who's cheating on her husband. I Want to Show You More is supposed to be sharp-edged and fearless, mixing white-hot yearning with daring humor. And this is actually this is her debut. But I wanted to read it because it's been on my TBR since who knows when. And I like short story collections. I tend to because, I either tend to really love them or not like them very much. I don't feel like they're fine. But I'm hoping that this can be one that I really enjoy because also short story collections are pretty easy to get through because you read one story at a time and then you can sort of move through other works at the same time easier, I feel. I read multiple books at once no matter what it is though, to be honest. But yes, I'm going to read this. And that's my second chance book. The last pick, hopefully, for this round. Move forward 7. Oh wait, hold on, shit. Since we're at blue, I have to go up the tower. I'm so sorry. sci-fi. And the last prompt that I landed on was to read a sci-fi. And for this, I picked a dystopian, which I've mentioned before. I count dystopia as sci-fi. All right, it's my favorite subgenre of sci-fi, to be honest with you. And so I picked a post-apocalyptic dystopian book called Into the Forest by Jean Hegland. And I found out, I did not know when I put this on my TBR that this was a movie, but it says on Goodreads that it's a movie. And the cover picture that is the movie cover, I've seen that movie. I don't really remember much about it, but essentially this book is about two sisters who are living in this like cabin in the woods, house in the woods, like kind of secluded area. And their power goes out one day. And so it's like the world has ended, but they're not close enough to civilization to really like have that mean a lot to them until you get further and further along. And I remember the movie had this really like claustrophobic, scary feeling because they come upon strangers in the woods, and that's never a good thing, especially when civilization is collapsing. So I'm very excited to see what this book does with that concept. Because again, I don't remember all the details of the movie, but I do remember liking it. I'm very excited to get to that one. And that is the last of my sorry picks. I do have a couple other books that I'm planning on reading in May, so I'll just go through those very briefly. The first of those is the third book in the Daevabad trilogy, which is Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty. I read the second book last month and the first book a year. And they're doing a read-along. I'm saying they because I don't know exactly who it is, but I'll link the people that I can find who are doing this, like in charge of this, down below. But this is a, what is it, Egyptian-inspired fantasy, I guess, or like Middle Eastern-inspired fantasy about this girl, Nari, who is working as a con artist in Cairo. And she has the ability to sense when someone is like hurt, and she can heal people. But she's sort of using her power for evil at the beginning of the book because she's tricking people into thinking they have these ailments that they don't have. And she has this running deal with the apothecary down the street that these people will then go to the apothecary for tinctures and cures that they don't need. And then Nari gets cut of that. And one day while she's doing like these little ceremonies that she does, she accidentally summons a djinn and gets swept up into the djinn world and learns that she actually has these like magical abilities. And it sort of goes from there. There's a lot of politics in this world. And like at the beginning of the books, they have this map type thing that goes through who each of the like, not houses, but like sects of the djinn are. And I find that really like fascinating. So I really like this series. I will say I loved book one much more than I liked book two. I feel like book two really had middle book syndrome for me. There's a time jump at the beginning of book two, so you get like a snippet of what happened at the end of book one, and then it jumps forward 5 years, which for me, I just didn't fully love. You're also like, I feel like what was so good about book one is seeing all the characters come together, and then in book two, they're all sort of doing their own thing and they're separate again. And I didn't love that for me personally. So I'm hoping that book three is able to get all the characters back together and wrap this up in a way that is satisfying to read. But we'll see. Again, I'm being purposefully vague on what's going on because I don't want to spoil anything. So yeah, that's how I feel about that. And I'm hoping to enjoy the wrap up. And then I think there is a prequel or something that we're going to read in June, River of Silver. I don't know if it's a prequel. I don't know if it's another sequel. I think it's shorter. So I don't know if it's like stuff happening in between, but the group is reading that in June. I won't be done with this in May, but I will be close. And then finally, I am trying to participate in the Buzzword this month. The Buzzword is every in May. So I'm going to be reading, and so I'm going to be reading Everything I Learned. I Learned in a Chinese Restaurant by Curtis Chin, which I do own. Here it is. This is a memoir by Curtis Chin, and I believe his parents owned a Chinese restaurant in Detroit. Is that where he's from? Yep, Detroit in the 1980s. And he is gay and coming out, and it's just about life lessons he learned while being associated with this Chinese restaurant, I guess. I don't really know that much about it. I know I bought this right when it came out, off of Pango actually, or some service. So I didn't pay full price for it. I bought it from someone who had read it when it just came out and then sold it. So I am excited to read this. I do like a memoir. Hopefully this will be a nice like reprieve from all of the fantasy fiction that I'm reading. So I'm gonna read that. I have a couple of other options for this prompt. So I have The End of Everything, Astrophysically Speaking by Katie Mack, which is another nonfiction book. I probably will only read this if I can find an audiobook of it because I do tend to like audiobooks of nonfiction. I know that I'm gonna read this physically, but I generally enjoy an audiobook. There's also And Now We Have Everything, which is another nonfiction book. This is another memoir. It's about a woman who, the subtitle is something like On Motherhood Before I Was Ready or something, so I don't know exactly what that's going to be about. I also have Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. That's a possibility, which the first line says Lydia is dead, but they don't know this yet. So it begins this exquisite novel about a Chinese-American family living in 1970s small-town Ohio. Lydia is the favorite child of Marilyn and James Lee, and her parents are determined that she will fulfill the dreams they were unable to pursue. And then it goes on from there. I don't know if I'm actually going to get to this, but it's Celeste Ng. What is the other book that she wrote that I read? Hold on. I can see the cover of it. It's like a navy blue cover with like fire on it or something. Unless that wasn't her. Maybe that wasn't her. It wasn't her. Who wrote that book? I don't know. I feel like I'm crazy. Anyways, she wrote Little Fires Everywhere, which I haven't read, but I believe this is like kind of like Leanne Moriarty. I haven't read any of her stuff either, but I feel like Celeste Ng, Leanne Moriarty are kind of like in the same vein, and they write like contemporary books with like a mystery lean. So I am hopeful to get to this one. We'll see if I actually do, because again, this is just an option. Another option that I have is The Man Who Saw Everything by Deborah Levy, which is a book set in the 80s, and Saul Adler, a narcissistic young historian, has been invited to communist East Berlin to do research. In exchange, he must publish a favorable essay about the German Democratic Republic. So it's about the difficulty of seeing ourselves and others clearly. It greets the specters that come back to haunt old and new love, previous and current incarnations of Europe, conscious and unconscious transgressions, and real and imagined betrayals, while investigating the cyclical nature of history and its reinvention by people in power. Here, Levy traverses the vast reaches of the human imagination while artfully blurring sexual and political binaries, feminine and masculine. So this is a queer historical fiction, literary fiction book. It was longlisted for the Booker in 2019. It's on my TBR, so I'm gonna put it on this possibility list. It depends on if I can get an audiobook or an ebook, or if I have time to get to all of these. And then the last one that I have as a possibility is Everyone's an Alien When You're an Alien Too by Jomny Sun, which is a graphic novel. Again, I don't know if I have a copy of this as an ebook. I don't buy graphic novels because I don't tend to love them, but I do like to read them sometimes, and especially since I'm behind on my Goodreads goal, which as we are speaking right now, I believe I am 4 books behind on my Goodreads goal, which I'm trying to get back up to date at the end of this month here, see if we can do it before May. But yes, those are the books that I'm planning on reading in the month of May. I don't know how many that is. I know I had like 5 or 6 possibilities for the Buzzword, plus the 6 books that I'm definitely reading. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, let me know. If you've read any of these books, let me know in the comments down below how you feel about them. Also, let me know for the options for which books you think I should prioritize, which books you liked, didn't like, etc. I always love hearing from you. But that is going to be it for me today. Like this video if you like it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!